photography is like a sport. You're given a certain set of rules. The camera is a rectangle. You got to fill that rectangle with interesting things. And you never know what's going to be interesting or if it's going to make art or even a sensible picture. So in the moment, remember, on the top of the camera, it says 1,000th of a second, 500th of a second, which means we, as human beings, can react. In 1,000th of a second, we can recognize what feels like meaning or something of, some poetic characteristic. And so you try in that split second of recognition to make the frame just interesting enough by moving around and seeing and collecting these things, because the world goes on at 360 degrees around you, but the frame is 70 degrees. So you're cutting away 290 degrees of matter in all directions. So you've got to put a kind of intelligence into that frame. And the intelligence is a visceral, artful intelligence. And I probably understood something about the nature of that because I had been studying art history and I was in art school and I was looking at all kinds of paintings in museums and books. So I was aware of the dynamics of filling a frame. I just had to do it in a split second when I didn't quite understand in fact, I'll use story, but it wasn't about what the story is, but what is of interest in this collision between things that are disconnected from each other. Because those 8 people in the frame had nothing to do with each other. These 2 were making out. This guy was thinking about, what he's going to tell his boss because he fucked up. This one is over there is looking in shop windows to get a new brassiere. Who the fuck knows what they're doing? But in some way, to me, when I cut the rest of it out, those 6 or 7 people looked really interesting. Whatever was going on, I had to make it. So I never say I take pictures. I say I make photographs because they don't exist. They only exist when I cut everything else away. So in a way, it's like an editing process in the moment. Photography is all about the moment. A moment of recognition on your part, a moment to bring the camera up and press the button. It lives and dies in a breath. So to learn that discipline is like a sport. I played third base, both on the street in the sandlots, but also in high school and then later on in college. And so the hot corner means you got to pay attention to the whole field. Got to watch what's going on so you could sweep up that ball and get the guy out at second. And, it's like, wow, you have to pay attention. And I think that I learned that from living in the Bronx and from being in a tough neighborhood where my father taught me, just keep your eye on all these things because they're going to tell you who's going to be a troublemaker, who's going to be a nice guy. You got to learn to read the street. He told me that. And so I spent my whole life reading the street. And in a way, it's been what's given me the gift of a sense of humor or a sense of timing or a sense of purpose, of meaning. I really learned a lot from being on the streets, human nature on the streets of New York.